You're just a failure who can barely live because I support you. My husband glares at me as he says this. It's about time I could have bought some time. Your end is near. My name is Lauren, and I am 36 years old. I live with my husband, Matt. Matt was a high school classmate, and we reconnected at a reunion 9 years ago. We hit it off and started dating. After dating for 3 years and reaching the right age, we naturally decided to get married. Matt works in a company in the city center. I used to work in web design at another company. But last year I became freelance and now work from home, doing a wide range of design work. Matt and I live together in a suburban apartment. We have been married for 6 years but have no children. A few years ago, when we couldn't have children, a hospital check revealed that I was infertile. I was shocked when I was told this at the hospital, but now, 4 years later, I have come to accept it. Matt was shocked too when he found out, but he said kindly, "In a way, it means we can spend time together." And we decided to spend our lives together as a couple. Gradually accepting the reality, I thought being happy together in our old age was enough. However, Matt's attitude changed drastically over the past year. Recently, he started spending more time at his parents' house. Coming home and saying, "My parents are giving me a hard time about having kids again. It's annoying. Don't you feel sorry for not being able to have children?" His parents' house is a 1.5-hour drive from ours. Not an easy place to access, but he visits them once a month. If he dislikes being nagged about children by his parents, I wonder why he bothers to visit so often. Thinking that, I say, "I'm sorry. But if you're going to be spoken to like that, why don't you reduce the number of times you go home? There's no need to go out of your way to make yourself unhappy." When I say this, he retorts, "What, you want me to abandon my parents? You're heartless. You can't even give them grandchildren, and now you tell me to abandon them?" I didn't say anything like that. I would never say such a thing, but Matt always makes me out to be the bad person, calling me heartless. However, I doubted his story. I once confirmed it with my in-laws. "I'm sorry, I can't show you a grandchild because of my condition." Don't be silly. There's no need to worry about that. We've never wanted to see a grandchild from you specifically. The younger one has children. As expected, my in-laws didn't seem bothered at all. When I first told them about my infertility, they comforted me as I cried. I couldn't imagine them saying such things, so I was cautious about believing Matt's story. After all, it's been 4 years since my condition was known. Yet, suddenly making a fuss about children and being harsh to me seemed incomprehensible. Then one day, I received a message from my friend Samantha. "Hello? Lauren? It's been a while. Can we meet soon?" Samantha was a classmate from the same high school as Matt and me. She's Matt's childhood friend and my best friend. She was the most supportive when I decided to date Matt. When she asked to meet, I readily agreed, and we planned to meet on the next day off. That day, I told Matt, "I'm going to have a cafe with Samantha." The meeting place was our usual cafe. We didn't need to say it, this was always our spot. I arrived on time for our meeting, and Samantha was already inside the cafe. "Samantha, long time no see." "Lauren, it's been a while. How are you? How are things going? How's Matt? And your work?" "Matt, well, I don't know. Work is going great. I never thought it would go this well. I'm really thankful to you, Samantha, for giving me the idea." "What are you talking about?" "I just suggested that working from home might suit you better. But since you're saying that, maybe you can treat me to a cake." Of course. I'll treat you to cake. But it's rare for you to want to meet up. Is something wrong?" When I asked this, Samantha's face clouded over for a moment. I became a bit cautious. She must have some worries. I need to listen properly. Just as I turned my attention fully to Samantha. Samantha. What a coincidence. Mind if I join? I heard a familiar voice from the side. Startled, I looked and saw Matt standing there. He's usually so casual on weekends, but today he was wearing a shirt and jacket. His voice was unusually gentle, and I was shocked. He hadn't spoken to me like that recently. Why is Matt here? This cafe is totally aimed at women, not a place where Matt would come alone. It's full of sweet things, not to Matt's taste. Ah. Matt. Samantha looked at me, her eyes begging for help. I'll just sit down here, excuse me. Saying this, Matt sat next to Samantha. Normally, he would sit next to me, his wife. But I couldn't understand why he chose to sit next to Samantha. Matt, what are you doing here all of a sudden? Why are you sitting there? Samantha is uncomfortable. Move away a bit. I scolded him, seeing Samantha looking uncomfortable. But Matt was unfazed. What's wrong with you? Are you jealous? You know, being jealous at your age is embarrassing. He said, laughing. It's not about jealousy. Samantha is clearly troubled. And why are you here? You never come to this kind of cafe. Just happen to be here. And why should I report my weekend plans to you? I was looking forward to a nice chat with Samantha, but you've ruined it. Why barge in like this? What? Just listen to me. I'm the one who married you, remember? You can't even have kids. And now you talk back? You used to be sensible, but now you've quit your job and live a lazy, aimless life. What right do you have to say anything? Lauren and Samantha exchanged glances. True, I quit my old job, but now I work from home. I earn a decent amount and even save for our home. I turned freelance because Matt started nagging about household chores. I had explained all this to Matt, but he seems to have completely forgotten. Or maybe he just doesn't care. I was astounded. I'm sorry, but I am working. I have my own income. There's no reason to call me aimless. I said, to which he replied, don't lie. I know all your lies. I've lived with you long enough to see through them. Oh, is that so? Even after all these years living with you, I still can't understand what's going on in your head. If Matt could see through my lies, he should also see that what I just said is true. Samantha looked awkwardly at us both. Sorry Samantha, for this silly fight, I said, then grabbed Matt's arm and led him out of the cafe. Please, really go back. Don't make Samantha feel uncomfortable. After saying this firmly, Matt left with a click of his tongue. I went back inside and apologized to Samantha again. I'm really sorry about Matt. He's been like this since the beginning of the year, mocking me, and I don't know why. It's like he's become a different person. That sounds tough. Yes, it is. He knows we can't have children, but recently he's been blaming me constantly. He suddenly started saying that my mother-in-law and father-in-law are disappointed. But when I asked my mother-in-law, she said that wasn't true at all. He's just looking for my flaws and trying to feel superior. Samantha looked downcast as she listened to my story. Samantha? I panicked, thinking maybe Matt's appearance had upset her, or my gloomy story did. Lauren, actually, there's something I need to tell you. That's right, I had completely forgotten because of Matt's interruption. Samantha had been trying to share her troubles. Remembering this, I turned my attention back to her. I've been hesitant to tell you because I thought it might hurt you. But I can't take it anymore. I have to tell you. As she spoke, Samantha began to cry. Surprised, I moved beside her and stroked her back. About Matt, for about a year now, he's been persistently following me. She started talking, tears streaming down her face. Matt and Samantha have been neighbors and friends since before high school. Their homes are next to each other, so whenever Matt goes to his parents' house, they end up meeting. Samantha lives at home, and for about a year now, every time Matt visits his parents, he brings gifts to Samantha's house. Even when her parents found it strange, Matt insisted on waiting for Samantha to come out to give her the gifts himself. If it had just been that, it might have been excused as a close childhood friendship. Samantha was suspicious, but didn't think too much of it. However, about half a year ago, Matt's behavior escalated. He started asking her out on dates over line. Samantha showed me their messages, crying and apologizing. Sorry. I only married Lauren because she was pretty. I never thought she'd be infertile, a failure. I've been deceived for so long. I guess Samantha is the only one for me. You're still single because you're waiting for me, right? I'll get rid of Lauren soon, then marry me. I earn enough to support you alone. Reading these delusional messages, my head spun. So this was why Matt had been acting strange for about a year. To think he was doing this to my best friend, Samantha. His attitude towards me had worsened, and my affection for him had faded. But it seems his love for me had vanished long before. That's no excuse to bother Samantha, though. If Matt really fell for Samantha and wanted to be with her, he should have first told me he loved Samantha and asked for a divorce. I would have warned Samantha to be careful, but I would have divorced Matt immediately and moved on with my life. The whole situation seemed utterly messed up. I've been wanting to tell you, but I felt like I was betraying you. I'm really sorry. Seeing Samantha cry and apologize, I felt a tightness in my chest. Samantha shared her fears of being hated by me and of what an enraged Matt might do. I thought it was best for Samantha to leave her parents' house and find a safe place as soon as possible. I discussed with Samantha about her future and getting her away from Matt's reach. I decided to discuss Samantha's situation with her parents and make sure that Matt doesn't find out where she is. I immediately went to Samantha's house and her parents' place. I suggested that Samantha should move out. Samantha's parents, being naive and kind, were initially shocked to learn that their neighbor and childhood friend was doing such things. After seeing Samantha's tears, they became very angry with Matt. We then went next door to Matt's parents' house and told them everything. Matt's parents were very apologetic to Samantha and her parents. I asked Matt's parents to pretend they didn't know anything about this situation, and to help buy time for Samantha to escape. Later on, whenever Matt tried to visit his parents, I made up reasons to stop him. Matt's frustration grew as he found it increasingly difficult to meet Samantha. It made sense. He couldn't even contact her, as I had Samantha block him and change her phone. Frustrated by not being able to reach Samantha, Matt started taking it out on me. You ruin my weekends every time. Despite being at home every day, you make me do the housework. That's a failure of a housewife. You're just a failure who barely lives off my support. While saying this, Matt angrily hung the laundry. I deliberately didn't wash any of Matt's clothes during the weekdays, pushing him to the point where he had no clothes to wear the next day. His frustration exploded as he was forced to do unfamiliar chores under my watch. It happened just as Samantha's escape was complete. Matt threw the pillow he was hanging at me, saying, "Enough of this. I can't stand doing this anymore. Get out of here. Aimless like you will end up homeless anyway." He said this while laughing and thrust a divorce paper at me. Just as I expected. I quickly signed it and handed it back to Matt. I took my belongings and work equipment and left the house. I then headed to Matt's parents' house. I had arranged to stay with them until I found a place. Matt, thinking he had finally gotten rid of me, seemed overjoyed and went to Samantha's house. Finding it empty, he stood frozen in the middle of the street for a while. Matt will surely look for Samantha, but I've taken care of that. It's impossible for him now. I spread word about Matt's actions to our classmates during this time-buying strategy. No one will help him now. As for me, I used my savings to move. Half a year after divorcing Matt, he contacted me. He had blocked me, so I carelessly forgot to block him. Hey, long time no see. How's homeless life after half a year? You must be sick of it by now, right? Come back if you want to escape. I'll forgive you if you apologize. Oh, really? Thanks. But you know, I'm really comfortable right now. Why would I leave a luxury apartment to return to your place? Luxury apartment? Have you gone mad? I'm perfectly sane. I'm living in a luxury apartment in the Bay Area, complete with a concierge. It's very comfortable. We divorced half a year ago, but Matt, so intent on getting rid of me, never brought up the division of assets. Seeing that he didn't mention it, I didn't either. That's because I had been working from home and investing in stocks since I was young. So I had plenty of assets. When I started my new life, I decided to move to a nice house and chose a seaside luxury apartment. Compared to the days of his verbal abuse, my days now, where I can work as much as I want, whenever I want, are incredibly comfortable. I have no intention of going back to a petty office worker's verbal abuse. You want to get back with me, right? You lost someone to do the household chores. Although I had no contact with Matt, I occasionally communicated with his parents. Recently, Matt's former mother-in-law said that when she went to Matt's house, it had turned into a terribly stinking garbage house. Matt begged her to clean, but the situation was so bad with the awful smell and countless flies that she said, "You need to call a professional cleaning service," and then she fled the house. Given Matt's recent behavior, his parents were appalled and unlikely to indulge him easily. I heard your house has become a garbage dump. Sorry, but I'm not a free cleaning service. Besides, we're divorced, remember? Who do you think you are, expecting me to come back? You don't even earn more than me. Matt seemed shocked by my words. I didn't want to hear any more from him. So I ended the call and blocked him immediately. Later, he realized I had blocked him and went crying to his parents. Lauren won't listen to me. Help me find her. If we make her apologize, we can all live in the luxury apartment she's talking about. I'll take care of everything. His parents, aware of the whole situation with Samantha and everything else, told him they knew everything. They then said, "We're disowning a foolish son like you. You're a bad influence on your sister's family. Never show your face here again." And they kicked him out of the house. Matt begged and cried, but it was too late. Even his own parents had no intention of helping him. Afterward, he contacted our classmates, trying to find Samantha and my whereabouts, but to no avail. Everyone knew about his misdeeds. Shunned by his parents and classmates, Matt was overwhelmed by complaints about the stench from his neighbors and eventually fled. Apparently, he went to work smelling like garbage and gradually lost his standing at the company. Still refusing to change, he blamed others for his lack of promotion, claiming he was being sabotaged, and eventually quit his job. He tried to find work, but with the stench and his tattered suit, no company would hire him. Matt, who had laughed at me becoming homeless, now seemed to be living such a life himself. There's no way he could find me or Samantha in his current state. I assured Samantha that she no longer needed to worry. Relieved, Samantha cried. Finally, she can sleep peacefully. The best part of this ordeal was that our friendship remained intact. We'll continue to meet at our usual cafe. I thought about this while looking at the sea from my balcony. We have a breaking news update. This morning around 9 o'clock, a flight from JFK to London has crashed. It is believed that a malfunction in the aircraft is the cause. As of now, no survivors have been found, and the search continues. I couldn't believe my ears as the news suddenly broke into my morning routine. I felt as if I had been struck in the head with a blunt object, a wave of shock overwhelming me. My husband was on that plane. Despite my emotions, the news continued to monotonously deliver more bad tidings. The search is still ongoing, but there are no survivors. I felt nauseous as I repeatedly tried to call my husband, Ethan, but couldn't get through. Holding back my tears, I desperately called my best friend. My name is Victoria. I live with my husband Ethan and our daughter Kristen. I used to work at the same place as Ethan, but I left my job when we got married, fearing it might affect our family life. Now I work part-time while Kristen is at kindergarten, helping with the household finances. I am truly glad we bought a house before getting married. Not having a mortgage was less stressful than I had ever imagined. Juggling housework, childcare, and work was harder than I thought. But Ethan's support in parenting never made it feel too stressful. We had built a good home where we could support each other in times of trouble or hardship. However, I had recently been troubled by something. Ethan, why don't you take Kristen to the park? It's been a while. What? Now? Not necessarily now, but I've noticed you haven't played together much lately. Mom, stop. I don't want to go to the park with Dad. And if Kristen doesn't want to go, it can't be helped. We'll go when she feels like it. Kristen had suddenly become cold towards Ethan. Even at 5, a girl might start having a phase where she doesn't want to be around her father. I was worried about this sudden change. It was unusual for Kristen, who loved the park, to completely avoid it. I couldn't pinpoint the reason and was feeling anxious, just observing the situation for now. And there was another thing. Around the time Ethan stopped taking Kristen to the park, his work suddenly increased. He started working on weekends, staying late every day. And the frequency of his business trips increased to almost once a month. This workload was immense, and I was worried he might collapse. He said his department had changed, so this might continue for a while. I worried, but with Kristen keeping her distance from Ethan, I found this new dynamic somewhat a relief. Was she being cold? When her frustrations piled up, I often fell ill. That's when I would talk to my best friend, Claire. So, yay. My husband seems to be exploited at work. How's your husband doing? Wow, it's hard to believe he's working at the same company. We don't have such issues. Really? Maybe it's just his department. Claire and Ethan were colleagues when I worked there. I had already quit due to marriage and Claire had due to her pregnancy. Now only their husbands were left working there, making it easier for them to relate. Kristen adored Claire and was thrilled at the prospect of having dinner with her. As they were eating and venting, Ethan returned home around 7 o'clock, which was unusually early for him, who typically returned after 11 o'clock. Welcome back. You're early today. I'm home. I've got a business trip starting tomorrow. So things will be a bit hectic in the room. That's sudden. Where to this time? What time are you leaving in the morning? I'll prepare breakfast accordingly. I'm off to London for a week. I have a 9 o'clock flight from JFK, but I need to stop by the office first, so I'll leave home at 5:30. Claire, please feel free to stay as long as you like. Ethan quickly exchanged a few words and then shut himself in his room. A sudden trip to London starting tomorrow. My frustration with the company's harsh treatment of its employees was evident. But Claire noticed my distress and tried to soothe me. Are you okay? These sudden business trips, especially for a week, must be tough with Kristen still being so young. Claire. Okay, this is too much. I'm going back now and will ask my husband to investigate. We'll conduct a thorough department audit. We need to use his position in internal auditing. As soon as she said this, Claire quickly got ready, hugged Kristen, and hurriedly left. On the day of the trip, it was Saturday, so there was no work for me and no kindergarten for Kristen. We decided to go to the park as Kristen woke up. While leisurely getting ready and turning on the TV, a news flash suddenly appeared. Breaking news. This morning around 9 o'clock, a plane bound for London from JFK Airport crashed. It is believed that a malfunction in the aircraft is the cause. As of now, no survivors have been found, and the search continues. I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing. JFK. 9 o'clock. London. All the words matched. I felt as if I had been struck in the head with a blunt object. Ethan was on that plane. The news continued to deliver bad tidings, disregarding her feelings. The search is still ongoing, but there are no survivors. I desperately hoped Ethan wasn't on that flight. My hands trembled, and I kept dropping my phone as I tried to call Ethan. Why won't it connect? Unable to get through, I resisted the nausea rising in my throat and kept calling. As the failed attempts increased, her composure slipped away, and tears streamed down her face. Unable to bear it alone any longer, I called Claire. That's terrible. Wait, I'll call my husband right now to check the flight details and get back to you. Thank you. Claire, I'm sorry for always troubling you. Thank you so much. I was only able to cry in response to Claire's kind words. After crying my heart out, I regained some composure. Then I heard the notification sound of Messenger. Rushing to check, I saw a message from Ethan. Relieved that Ethan was alive, I suddenly felt drained. After a moment of stupor, I opened the message screen. Sorry, I couldn't get back to you. I've just arrived at the office. What's up? No matter how many times I read the message, I couldn't comprehend it, and my mind started to panic. Then my phone showed an incoming call from Claire. Claire, I just got a message from Ethan. What should I do? Victoria, are you okay? What did it say? He said he just got to the office. Victoria, listen calmly. Ethan has taken a 10-day leave starting today. Also, his department is very clean. They hardly ever work overtime or on weekends. What? The content was so shocking that my vision blurred. What did I just hear? Ethan's department is clean. Then what about all this time? Victoria, stay there. I'm coming over right now. Don't do anything. I knew Claire was on her way, but my mind was elsewhere. I was about to call Ethan when I heard a voice. Mom, I wonder how long she has been awake. She approached hesitantly and began to speak in bits and pieces. Mom, when Dad goes to the park, he always meets up with a woman. Then they play strange games together. That's why I find it boring to go to the park with Dad. What? Meeting up with another woman? Obscene? Yeah, there's this woman, Becky. She always says she wants to be my mom. It's really scary. It was a shock. Now I understood why Ethan was so eager to take Kristen to the park. And a different kind of nausea surged within me. Using our child as a cover and engaging in amorous activities in front of her was disgusting. Claire's voice, full of concern, came from the phone, but I couldn't utter a word. My breathing became shallow, and I lost consciousness. How long had passed? When I woke up, I saw Claire looking worried and Kristen with tear-swollen eyes. It seemed I had fainted from the overwhelming stress. Fortunately, I was unconscious for only about 2 hours. After waking up, I felt oddly clear-headed. Once my thoughts were organized, anger bubbled up at the repeated lies and the infidelity involving their child. I couldn't just lie there. I got up, thanked the two for their concern, and started looking for evidence. Surprised by my sudden action, they nevertheless helped me once they understood her intent. We ruthlessly searched Ethan's room and found a locked drawer in his desk. Annoyed by the lock, I searched for the key in its usual hiding place and, unsurprisingly, found it. Opening the drawer, we found a mountain of photos with Ethan and his mistress, some too explicit for Kristen to see. I'm irritated that he left the key in the usual place. But to think he was collecting these kinds of photos. I can't believe how much he underestimated me. This is beyond despicable. Wait, I know this woman. Kristen, can you wait here and eat the snacks I brought while Mommy talks to Aunt Claire? Okay. Mommy, Sister Claire, good luck. Apparently, Claire recognized the woman in the photos. While Kristen was eating her snacks, we went to another room to talk. This woman, I knew I recognized her. She's the president's secretary, no doubt about it. According to Claire, this woman used to work in general affairs. She was a beautiful and competent worker who caught the president's attention and was promoted to his secretary, though it was unclear why she got involved with Ethan. Identifying her was a significant breakthrough. Now they had enough material for retribution. Ethan seemed to realize something was wrong as he returned home the next morning. Soon there was a knocking at the door. Victoria, you're in there, right? I can't open the house. Let me in. Who might you be? But it's me, Ethan. Stop joking around. I come home to find all my stuff outside. And the key doesn't work. What's going on? Don't you have any idea? What about the business trip that's actually a vacation? I was surprised by the coldness in my own voice. Ethan seemed to finally grasp the situation. The vacation, right? I was supposed to go to Hawaii starting today. I'm sorry. I was just tempted. I truly regret betraying you. I really love only you and Kristen. Since when? What? Since when have you been with Secretary Becky? How do you know about her? For about 2 years. I started finding our peaceful life boring, and that's when I met her. Boring. She was exciting in many ways. It was all new to me. It made me feel alive, and before I knew it, I couldn't stop. I see. Then I'll free you from this boring life. In many ways. Wait, Let's talk properly. I truly love you, Victoria. I don't want to leave you or Kristen. Get a person who indulges in obscenities in front of his daughter. What do you have to say? Sorry, but I'm not kind enough to indulge your perversions. Enjoy your excitement alone. I used to love him so much, but betrayal made my feelings fade away quickly. I demanded a divorce from Ethan without letting him argue, and sought educational expenses. I also demanded educational expenses from his mistress through her company. The news spread quickly within the company the next day. Moreover, it was discovered that she had been manipulating the president's schedule and expenses, which led to her dismissal. The money was probably used for Ethan's sake. Why she went so far for Ethan remains a mystery. Ethan was transferred to an overseas branch that no one wanted to go to. As for us, Kristen, I'm sorry I didn't notice you were suffering. It'll be just the two of us from now on, but I promise to be there for you. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you for understanding, Mommy. I love you. Well, no fair. I'm here too, remember? Let me know if there's anything I can help with. Thank you, Kristen, Claire. I think I made Kristen suffer for a long time. I realized how inadequate I had been after receiving so much help from Claire. I should live with more gratitude. We would never let Kristen's smile fade again, and so we started anew. The woman who stole the 60-year-old wealthy husband was the daughter of the husband's best friend. The big house, the company, everything is mine now. Then, the two of them had a lavish wedding overseas. However, as soon as they returned to the country and landed at the airport, the ex-husband was suddenly arrested, and I received an enraged call from his wife. The wife, who thought she would live a free and luxurious life, was stunned to learn the unexpected truth. I am currently a 53-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, who is 7 years older than me. We co-run a company together, where my husband is the president and I am the vice president. We got married about 30 years ago. It might not have seemed early back then, but by today's standards, it might be considered a bit early. We originally worked at the same company, where my husband and I were superior and subordinate. After a proposal from my earnest husband, we started dating with marriage in mind and got married after about 2 years. Our marriage, with the age gap, has been mostly free from major fights. We always have a very good relationship, respecting and admiring each other. In the company, we are known as a loving couple. Even if we disagree on business matters, everything returns to normal once we are back home. By the way, we were not blessed with children. Before I was in my 30s, we both desperately wanted children but couldn't conceive naturally. However, around the time I turned 30, my husband started preparing to establish our current company. And I wanted to start a business too, so we decided to focus on work instead of children. The company we built from scratch is still surviving and has moderately expanded. It's become famous locally, and both the number of employees and branches are increasing. Though we don't have children, we have built something important together. As the number of new employees, including fresh graduates and mid-career hires, increases every year, and we are considering nationwide business expansion, it's time to start planning for next year's business. Currently, even though we are hiring more people, our training methods for new recruits aren't as sophisticated as those of large corporations. So we hire only as many fresh graduates as we can handle at the head office. Like other companies, we tend to train new graduates starting from sales positions. However, this year, as the secretary to my husband, the president, Resigned due to personal reasons, we decided to recruit someone for the secretary position. One day, a member of the HR department came to my office with an entry sheet from job-seeking students. The HR staff said, "The president was looking at resumes the other day and seemed personally interested in this woman. Do you have any connection with her?" They showed me the resume of a 22-year-old female student, the daughter of a friend from my husband's university days. That girl is the daughter of my husband's friend. It might be a coincidence. I haven't heard anything from my husband, but I'll check with him later. Although we generally avoid hiring through connections, if it's a coincidence. I thought it would be nice if she did well. So, that evening at home, I brought it up with my husband during dinner. "It seems the resume of your friend's daughter was sent for the secretary position. Did HR say anything to you about it today?" When I asked, my husband replied without surprise, "I understand. Actually, I was contacted after a long time by her father, asking for a favor. To employ his daughter in our company. She seems hesitant about job hunting, but she's attending a good university, right? She says she'll get a secretarial qualification if she gets the job." I couldn't refuse his request. My husband's friend, mentioned in the story, is a kind and diligent person. He even contributed some money when we started our company. I met his daughter a few years ago. She seemed quiet but firm and well-grounded. Even if we hired her through connections, I wasn't planning to oppose it too much. However, I was a bit worried about entrusting the secretary's duties to her as a new graduate. The fact that she plans to get a secretarial qualification before joining is commendable. But having a qualification and being able to perform the job without any issues are entirely different. Ideally, considering the nature of the work, we should recruit a mid-career employee with extensive experience to take on the secretary role immediately. It seems that my husband shares the same thoughts. But he intends to develop measures to quickly make her an effective part of our team. As time passed, spring arrived before we knew it. The girl, having successfully graduated from university, is set to join our company as a new employee the day after tomorrow. A photo of her in traditional graduation attire was sent by my husband's friend, making me deeply aware of the approaching day when we would work together. The entrance ceremony went smoothly, and after the training period, she truly became the president's secretary. She seems to be slightly envied and resented by her peers, but she doesn't appear to be bothered by it, always arriving at work with a composed face. So far, she has not spoken about her background or the circumstances of her joining the company, and her attitude at work is as serious as that of other employees. She doesn't seem to have trouble learning, which made me think that perhaps I was too concerned about her joining us. After a year of working, she became a fully competent secretary to the president, handling her tasks efficiently. However, around that time, I started hearing unpleasant rumors about her from other employees. Apparently, she behaves very amiably towards male visitors who come to see the president, but is quite rude to female visitors. My husband, who always observes her work, was surprised by her drastic change, but didn't reprimand her, deciding instead to wait and see. He occasionally gives her light warnings, but her attitude hasn't improved. I've observed her behavior at various meetings I attended, and it varies day by day. I've seen her on both good and bad days. While it's not strange for a person to have emotions and sometimes be unable to hide them, her behavior is extreme. And on days when she is in a good mood and particularly amiable, there are invariably young men among the business partners. When I felt she was being too disrespectful to our guests, I couldn't stay silent, even though my husband had also spoken to her. The president is the face of our company, and the president's secretary has a significant responsibility. However, she showed no remorse when I conveyed this. Instead, she was observed scrutinizing male visitors from head to toe. checking out their clothes and hairstyles, and guessing about their lifestyles. Initially, she only listened to my husband, but eventually, she stopped listening even to him. I am working, so be grateful. That became her catchphrase. Sometimes she would mutter it as she passed by, or say it loud enough for me to hear. While I watched the atmosphere in the president's office gradually become heavier, I couldn't take any action. Considering the help we received from my husband's friend when starting our business. Then, about a year later, a certain employee came to my office. I recognized his face and name. But he was not a senior executive who would normally need to speak with me directly. However, he insisted on having a serious conversation with me. So I let him in to hear him out. Slowly, with a heavy tone, he began to speak. I saw the president and the secretary walking arm in arm in the city at night. He nervously glanced at my face as he spoke, his forehead glistening with sweat. My relationship with my husband hadn't changed, and there had never been any reason for me to suspect him. But I couldn't think of any other reason why this employee would come to me looking so pale. For now, his testimony was all I had to go on. I wanted to trust my husband and my employee as much as possible. After thanking him for telling me, I sent him back to work and decided to observe my husband. Next Saturday, both of us had planned to take the day off. And my husband mentioned he would be going out in the morning. If they were indeed having an affair, I might be able to find out the truth that day. During dinner that evening, I enjoyed wine with my husband as if nothing was wrong. Then, on Saturday, my husband said he would be going out alone until evening and left the house. Noticeably well dressed. If I were my usual self, I would have thought nothing of it, assuming he was just going to a fancy bar alone. After seeing my husband leave with a carefree face, I decided to follow him. He drove off in his favorite luxury car. I had previously installed a tracking device under the seat, so I could follow his car later without any issues. As I expected, my husband drove off, unaware that he was being monitored. I synchronized the data from the tracker with my car's navigation system and tracked my husband's movements. Since there wasn't much time difference since we left home, I caught up with his car quickly. Following him with another car in between, I sighed, slightly exasperated that he hadn't noticed at all. My husband stopped his car at a station's rotary, and I parked nearby to watch. The girl in question emerged from the station and got into his car. They drove off again, and I followed. Soon, they entered the parking lot of a secluded hotel. Really, it's true. Honestly, I felt no emotion, but I was somewhat excited to collect the final piece of evidence. I parked my car in a nearby coin parking and headed towards the hotel's entrance. Well, what are the two of you doing here? The unexpected confrontation left them startled. When I addressed them, both of them flinched and turned around hesitantly, clearly taken aback. Why are you here? What's going on here? As they started to panic, I explained how I had followed them that day. My husband turned pale, and the girl, red-faced with anger, had to listen as I decided to confront them. Ah, right. I want to talk, but we shouldn't trouble the hotel staff. Shall we find a nearby cafe, or shall we just rent a room here? My husband, still pale, checked for a vacant room. The girl, protesting, had no way to escape as I was blocking the entrance. We entered a hotel room, an unusual gathering of a cheating husband, his connection-hired secretary, and the actual wife. The room was surprisingly ordinary, and I got straight to the point. When I questioned their relationship, my husband remained silent, but the girl started talking. We're dating, the president and I. It's perfect, right? A capable president and his secretary, who's been managing his work well. We've been together since I joined, and now I'm pregnant with his child. Considering my husband's age, I thought it was a bit too much. But seeing them together in a hotel made it hard to disbelieve. The girl confidently revealed their relationship, probably boosting my husband's unwarranted confidence. He began to make weak excuses, saying things like, "I always wanted a child, so when she became pregnant with my baby, I thought it was fate." I wanted to point out that he was the one who had given up on having children to focus on the business. But if she was really pregnant, it wasn't just a matter of breaking them up. The big house, the luxury car, the lavish lifestyle, all will be mine. How does it feel to have your millionaire husband taken away? Sorry, not sorry. The girl taunted me like a villain from a comic book. I felt a strong indignation at being mocked. With the evidence gathered, I decided to cool down and return home. My husband seemed to want to say something, but what excuses could he possibly make? Later, I called the employee who had informed me of my husband's affair to my office to report back and thank him. I told him how I wasn't as upset or tearful as he might have expected, and that I planned to make my husband pay dearly. As I had told him, I had already prepared to punish both my husband and the girl. I spoke with the company's legal advisor and got a referral to a divorce lawyer. I planned to ask for a high amount of compensation and a share of the property, including the house. Of course, the foolish husband wasn't my only target. I also had plans to punish the girl who looked down on me and always had a snide attitude. As planned, I demanded a significant amount in compensation, and made both my husband and the girl sign an agreement before the divorce was finalized. I never publicly discussed the reasons for my divorce, but somehow the word got out that it was due to my husband, the president, having an affair with his secretary. The two of them were so absorbed in their own world that they didn't notice the disdainful glances from others. Eventually, my ex-husband became completely subservient to her, leading to the resignation of many longtime company executives and competent employees who had once believed in him. A month later, I received a postcard from my ex-husband and the girl, stating they had officially wedded overseas. The card also mentioned their plan to return and earn enough to pay me the compensation in one lump sum. The tone of the message, condescending and annoying, was undoubtedly hers. I admit their wedding and venue abroad were impressive, but I was certain their happiness wouldn't last long. The very next day, they returned. But instead of settling into marital bliss, the girl frantically called me. "Wait, what do you mean he's been arrested?" She was in the throes of a panic, screaming incoherently, her words a jumble of shock and disbelief, unable to form a coherent sentence. "Oh, you didn't know anything about it?" As I replied with a confident, almost triumphant tone, she was momentarily at a loss for words. "What? What do you mean?" she asked tentatively. Her voice, usually more assertive, sounded lower and more cautious over the phone. "Well, my ex-husband has been arrested for insider trading suspicions." Yes, in fact, my husband had realized that employees were leaving the company, and its management was beginning to falter. Before the announcement of the company's worsening performance, he had been encouraging personal acquaintances who were shareholders to sell their stocks. The discovery of the secret insider trading was not something I orchestrated. In fact, I first learned about it when the police contacted me out of the blue. I had to undergo questioning at the police station, but since I was not involved, I was able to return home quickly. It was surprising how my ex-husband had become so morally lax, engaging in affairs and illegal trading. I always had a hunch he was unreliable, especially when I had to warn him numerous times about potentially letting slip critical information about the company's declining performance. Perhaps because I spoke with such normalcy, the reality of the situation seemed to hit the girl even harder. Without me to keep him in check, my ex-husband quickly resorted to insider trading. During the police questioning, I was treated as a person related to my ex-husband, and I had suspected that even without my involvement, he would likely be arrested eventually. He was arrested and detained, shattering his newlywed life with his young wife. Even in this dire situation, he sought to protect himself, asking for a lawyer I had arranged during our divorce, showing his self-serving nature. Needless to say, I had no intention of listening to or helping him in any way. After the divorce, I immediately established a new company. When I reached out to the employees who had left my ex-husband's company, many joined as valuable assets, ready to contribute immediately. My company began to thrive, benefiting from not only the reduced living expenses without my ex-husband, but also from the influx of both former employees and clients of his failing business. This allowed for quick expansion. Ultimately, my ex-husband was prosecuted and found guilty in a criminal trial, resulting in hefty fines. No longer the president of his company, he was forced out with nothing but the clothes on his back, leading to the company's bankruptcy. Months passed, and one day, I spotted a man and a woman arguing in a food court. The man appeared to be past retirement age, and the woman, seemingly of his daughter's age, was visibly pregnant and angrily berating him. The man stood there in dirty clothes, looking dazed and barely responding to her insults, almost as if he didn't even recognize her. Suddenly, the woman noticed me. She approached me aggressively, yelling that she was returning this useless old man to me, causing a scene. Yes, the couple at the food court were my ex-husband and the woman he had married. I was a bit surprised, but since I had no more ties with him, I calmly called the staff. They were already causing a scene in the food court, so the staff called the police on them for disrupting business. They were quickly taken away by the police. I only heard through rumors, but later on, she gave birth to a girl. However, their life seemed to be in dire straits, with my ex-husband barely able to work and her caught up in childcare. They were apparently struggling significantly. After the company's bankruptcy, my ex-husband lost almost all his assets paying compensation, damages, and fines to me. He seemed to have become reclusive, spending his days idly at home and often getting scolded. As for me, I'm working as a solo entrepreneur for the first time. But with the help and support of those around me, I'm leading a fulfilling life. We will be happy together because of the baby. Karen, who's the bride and my sister-in-law, was completely on cloud nine since her wedding is super elite, announcing proudly on the microphone that it's a shotgun wedding and is quite bold. But then, "But there isn't a baby in your belly, Auntie." My 5-year-old daughter, who handed flowers to her aunt as a flower girl, said so curiously. Immediately, Karen started trembling with panic. The attendees were stunned, not knowing what it was all about, but the family members were shocked as well. We were shocked because we all know that this child has a mysterious power. I am Emily, a 32-year-old full-time housewife. I've been married to my childhood bud, Tom, for 6 years. We have a happy married life with our 5-year-old daughter, Catherine. My mother-in-law is a kind person, and I thought we got along reasonably well, but I've always had a hard time with my sister-in-law, Karen. She speaks her mind without considering others' feelings. There's no word like restraint in her dictionary. And because of that, I got hurt. A lot. "Emily, you don't look that great. At least tidy up a bit. Your hair's a mess, and you don't wear makeup. It's unattractive." I don't like heavy makeup, and I think basic touch is enough. "Well, considering your looks, it's no surprise you ended up with an unimpressive guy like my brother." I was already getting angry with the way Karen was talking down to me, and now she was belittling her own brother. "You don't need to go that far. Tom has never said anything bad about you, and he only thought of you as his precious sister." "Oh, did I hurt your feelings? I'm just an honest person and can't keep my thoughts to myself. Anyway, I would never marry someone as low as you." Being honest is entirely different from saying whatever you like without considering others' feelings. To be honest, saying that I don't want to go to my husband's family home because of Karen is not an exaggeration at all. But good news arrived this year. Karen was getting married. I was delighted, thinking that I'd feel more relaxed visiting the in-laws once she moved out. A few days later, a wedding invitation arrived, but there was a note saying they also wanted our daughter to attend. Karen was always snarky whenever they met. The fact is, my daughter has had a mysterious power since she was a child. The relatives know about her power due to various shocking events. One instance was at a relative's memorial service. Catherine predicted that my uncle's family would have an accident on their vacation at the beach. Unfortunately, my cousin, a primary school kid, nearly drowned, causing a huge commotion. Another time, my mother-in-law couldn't remember where she put her husband's watch. Catherine approached her and said, "Grandma, are you looking for Grandpa's watch?" And it was precisely where she said it would be. Such incidents like this happened frequently. Karen doesn't attend family gatherings, so she doesn't know about my daughter's mysterious power, but she laughed out loud when she heard about it from her parents. There's no way such ridiculous stories are true. You're just brainwashing that child, probably trying to make profit on social media or something. That's not our intention. Catherine really did predict those events. Then Karen exclaims, "Whew!" and glared at the little girl, yelling at her, "You're just a child. If you try to trick adults, you'll get punished." Because of Karen, who was unabashed, not just with adults, but also with children, the little girl, having been scolded for no apparent reason, began to cry out of fear. It was yet another reminder of why I didn't want to get involved with Karen. However, I wondered who would want to marry such a woman. When I asked my husband, he said her fiancé is a wealthy heir. They apparently met at a mixer, and thanks to Karen's aggressive approach, their relationship developed, and Karen even proposed to him. But when they went to greet his parents, they weren't really happy about them, and they opposed their marriage. My husband said he didn't know the exact reason. I bet Karen said something that offended his parents. That's what I thought, but no one said anything about that. So why did they decide to get married? His parents, who opposed it, initially must have given their consent. Well, Karen said she was pregnant, so they had no choice but to approve of the marriage. That makes sense. Children often serve as a bond between couples, but I wondered if it was okay for Karen's desires to be fulfilled thanks to a child. Then one day, Karen suddenly came to our house. "There's a birthday party for my fiancé's mother coming up." "Oh, really? So I want to bring a very nice cake." "I see." I was wondering why she was telling me this, but that's when Karen made an outrageous request. "Make me an exceptionally magnificent cake. Emily, you're good at baking, right?" "What? Me?" "Yes, of course. I'm terrible at it." "Why don't you just buy a cake from a store?" "What? That won't impress his parents. People like you who can't think are so problematic." I was so taken aback by her attitude that I could hardly believe she was asking me to do her a favor. If she had said something like, "You're good at baking, so please help me," it would have been more understandable. But only Karen could manage to insult someone while asking for a favor. And once she gets started, she won't stop talking. After all, he comes from an elite, prestigious family. "Oh, I see. It's good that you're marrying into such a nice family." "A beauty like me should be with someone of his caliber. Aren't you envious? Unlike you who married in a rush." Karen became snarky again, and I did my best to argue back. "I'm happy. I'm very content with my life right now." "Yet you always wear cheap clothes. You must be pretending to be happy. What a pity." I was irritated, but I figured once Karen got married, I wouldn't have to see her and her annoying self as much. I decided to endure it for now and made her a top quality cake with all my baking skills. Normally, one would let me know how the party went, but I never heard anything back from Karen on how it went. But then again, considering that she's Karen, if something had gone wrong, she would have complained. So no news probably means the cake was a hit. About a month before the wedding, Karen came again, presumably to discuss wedding preparations. Why do I always have a bad feeling when she arrives? Karen wanted my daughter to be a flower girl at her wedding and hand her flowers. Finally, I understood why she invited my daughter. But then Catherine made a sudden ominous statement. She won't be able to get married. Hearing that, Karen became furious and started scolding my daughter, shouting, "Again with the lies, you terrible, horrible girl." My daughter was startled and began to cry. I was frustrated with Karen, who doesn't hesitate to speak her mind, even to kids. "So I'd like the flower girl's dress to be pink with lace. Please, don't choose white. I want it to contrast with my wedding dress." "Why are you asking for my daughter? Why don't you ask someone else?" "I wanted to ask for a more reliable child, but I couldn't find anyone suitable, so I had no choice but to ask for your daughter." I was dumbfounded at the audacity of Karen, who talked bad about my daughter yet still wanted her to be her flower girl. Even after Karen left, my daughter looked down. When I showed her a dress I found online, she brightened up, asking, "Will I get to wear something this beautiful?" I was relieved. Her mood improved. That night, I told my husband about the incident. "I can't imagine them not getting married at this point, but if Catherine says so, there might be something going on." I asked Catherine, but she doesn't seem to know the exact details. "Karen has always been a handful. Could you look into it, just to be sure?" I found it unusual for my husband, who rarely speaks ill of his sister, to say such a thing. When I pressed further, I heard shocking stories. Apparently, in middle school, she bullied a friend who started dating a boy she liked, leading that friend to stop coming to school. In college, she dated 3 guys at once, and when that was found out, it caused a major scandal. Her parents always had to clean up after her. Given Karen's history, it wasn't surprising. However, I genuinely wished for Karen to get married, and I hoped these stories weren't true. Still, what my daughter had said and my husband's request made me curious, so I started investigating. I found many shocking facts about Karen, yet everything was based on gossip, with no concrete evidence. I was hesitant to discuss these findings with my husband, especially since I doubted she would admit to any of it. Before I knew it, the wedding day arrived. At the wedding, my sister-in-law wore a simple yet lavish wedding dress. The design accentuated her figure, and she looked genuinely beautiful. She'd be perfect if she just wouldn't talk. I couldn't help but think that, but of course, I didn't voice it out loud. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, and the time came for the flower girl, who was my daughter, to hand flowers to Karen. My daughter, dressed in a frilly pink dress, managed to hand over the bouquet to the bride with a hint of nervousness. Both my husband and I breathed a sigh of relief. Then, after receiving the bouquet, Karen, grabbing the microphone with her cheeks flushed, made a surprising declaration. "I will be happy with the child in my belly." "But there's no baby in your tummy, Auntie." Hearing that, Karen started shaking in shock. While the guests looked puzzled at my daughter's words, a buzz of shock ran through the family seats. "Did she lie just to get married? Is she not pregnant?" they whispered, casting suspicious glances at Karen. The groom's parents stood up, looking furious, and confronted Karen, demanding an explanation. Naturally, they'd do that, as they were initially against the marriage. She's just lying with a wild imagination. The whole family has always had trouble with her, and she's just trying to harass me now. Everyone, please, don't believe what she says." Hearing that, my daughter began to cry. Enough! I can't stand to see my daughter get hurt. In my anger, I couldn't help but speak up in front of everyone. "Wait a minute, Karen. For a pregnant woman, you seem to know very little about pregnancy. Maybe what my daughter is saying is correct? Why are you suddenly speaking up like this? I can't just sit by and watch when you speak terribly about my daughter. Let's really see who's lying." I hadn't intended to reveal what I had found out during the ceremony, but I couldn't stay silent. "You claim to be pregnant but haven't been to the clinic, right? So you don't have a maternity health record book, no signs of morning sickness, and despite claiming to be 6 months pregnant, your belly isn't showing. What's going on?" "Well, my belly just doesn't show that much." "Anyone can see that your pregnancy is a lie." "Are you telling me you lied about being pregnant just to marry me?" "Well, maybe I misunderstood that I was pregnant. It's just hard to admit now that I'm not." "I thought I had to take responsibility. You lied to me. The wedding is off." "But we've come this far. Let's get married." "This is no joke. Making me feel embarrassed in front of everyone? I don't even want to see your face." Karen, crying, clung to him, but John already made up his mind, and his parents as well. "It's your fault the wedding's off. What are you going to do about it?" "A marriage built on a lie wouldn't last anyway." "I'm in trouble without money. I was counting on marrying a rich guy like him." "I've heard you have quite a debt. Is that true?" "How do you know about that?" "From family and acquaintances, I found out that Karen had accumulated debt supporting a musician she liked. She also spent extravagantly, thinking she'd marry a wealthy man and pay off the debt. But life doesn't always go as planned." "Your daughter ruined the wedding, so you should pay off all my debt." "What are you talking about? You brought this on yourself." The more Karen shouted and screamed, the more she was met with disbelief and disdain from everyone. The groom and his parents, utterly disappointed, announced the cancellation of the wedding. And so my daughter's prediction, "Auntie won't get married," came true. Later, when the lie about the pregnancy was revealed, Karen was reportedly sued for $10,000 in damages by her ex-fiancé. The cost of the wedding, amounting to $30,000, ended up being Karen's responsibility to pay. Plus, with her existing debt of $20,000, she looked utterly hopeless. Following this incident, she was disowned by her parents. Rumor has it that Karen now lives in a run-down apartment, working night shifts and constantly trying to run away from debt collectors. As for me, I'm now enjoying peaceful days, growing even closer to my husband and in-laws. Interestingly, since the wedding debacle with Karen, Catherine has stopped making any prophetic remarks. Perhaps as kids grow, such abilities like hers fade. Nevertheless, I'm happy with that. I look forward to watching my daughter grow and thrive in the years to come. You might become disabled in your legs. When I, hospitalized due to an accident, was told this by the doctor, my mind went blank. But more than that, when my husband, who heard this with me, said, "That's why I told you don't get a dog. If you hadn't been walking the dog, you wouldn't have had the accident. I'm divorcing you. I will demand property division," and went to file for divorce on his own, my mind went from blank to utterly empty. Yet, for the sake of my beloved dog, who died protecting me, I decided to keep living, and also to seek revenge on my best friend who betrayed and used me. My name is Mandy. I have always loved dogs, so right after graduating high school, I became a dog groomer and started working. My days were filled with joy and fulfillment taking care of dogs I loved. I also love talking with dog owners, believing that there are no bad people among dog lovers. I had always lived at my parents' house, always with dogs by my side. The sudden misfortune struck me when I was 26. While I was away on a trip, my house caught fire. The fire started from the neighboring house. My parents, who failed to escape, passed away, and only the dog, who managed to flee, welcomed me back. At that time, I somehow continued working but lived each day in tears. Seeing me like this, my high school friend Abby said, "Why don't you take a big step and get married? I'll introduce you to a good person," and introduced me to Joe. Joe, for years my senior, had a robust physique and a reliable appearance. He worked at a decent company, not top tier, but it seemed he couldn't find a good match in his marriage hunt. He looked at me and exclaimed, "Wow, you look ideal, just my type." He was cheerful and dog-like, which made a very good impression on me. When I mentioned that I liked dogs, he said, "I'm definitely more a dog person than a cat person, even though cats are popular now." We talked about the good things about dogs, and before I knew it, we started dating and got married in 3 months. Things happen fast when they're meant to be. We registered our marriage before the wedding ceremony and started looking for a place to live. I intended to bring my dog, so I was searching for a pet-friendly apartment, but Joe said, "What? You're keeping the dog? Can't you find someone to take it?" I couldn't believe what he said. He liked dogs, but had no intention of keeping one. When I said I absolutely couldn't do that, he said, "Dogs need daily walks, right? I'm not taking care of that." So I promised, "I'll take care of everything." I promised that. No excuses like you couldn't make my dinner because you were taking care of the dog, okay? Understood, I'll manage. In hindsight, I should have reconsidered marrying him then, but we were already registered and I didn't even think of that option. I had no choice but to appease him to live with my dog. Eventually, we rented a pet-friendly apartment, but he constantly complained. "The dog is noisy. Hey, there's fur on the carpet." Unbelievable, paying high rent for a pet-friendly apartment and it's dirty. Whenever I was busy at work, I asked him to feed the dog. He'd snap. "You have no dinner for me, but the dog gets to eat? You care about the dog more than me." Still, I wanted to continue working, but he finally said, "If you can't do the housework properly, quit your job and become a housewife, or give the dog away." So I reluctantly resigned and became a housewife. However, his salary wasn't enough to afford our current apartment. Thinking of having children, I wanted to save money, so I decided to invest a little of the inheritance I received from my parents. At the beginning of our marriage, Joe persistently asked about my parents' inheritance, and I had a bad feeling. I told him, "It's not much, about $50,000. I'll keep it for buying an apartment." I didn't withdraw it. In reality, it was about $200,000, but I wanted to use it to open my own shop one day, so I understated the amount. That's why I didn't tell Joe about starting to invest. Another reason I kept quiet was because he, who only had a high school education, looked down on me. I realized after getting married that whenever I tried to express my opinion, Joe would dismiss me, saying, "What's the point of a high school graduate like you thinking? Just shut up and do the housework." He never listened to me. If I mentioned that I started investing, he would surely say it's a waste of money and to stop it. I realized too late that he was just looking for a convenient servant when he was into marriage hunting. I couldn't tell Abby, who introduced him to me, about this. When she asked, "How is he? He's manly and a good guy, right?" I lied. "Yes, he works hard and is a good husband." I wanted to complain, but I didn't want to make her feel responsible. Abby believed my lie completely and smiled contentedly. "Aren't you getting married, Abby? What about the boyfriend you were dating before?" Uh, we've been together so long that it's hard to bring up marriage. I want to, though. It's tough if the guy isn't willing, right?" "Exactly. You were lucky, Mandy." Joe was eager right from the start. Yeah. Well, he was actively looking for marriage from the beginning. "It's because you're such a great woman, Mandy. I'm really happy to see you so happy." I had mixed feelings, but thought it was okay if Abby was happy. The investment, which I started on a whim, turned out to be surprisingly fun, and I became more and more engrossed in it. When I got used to it, I boldly withdrew more of my parents' inheritance to increase my investment, which hit big. In 3 years, I was making an annual income of $400,000. I was surprised myself, but I never told Joe. By that time, his domineering attitude had become so tyrannical. "You're just lazing around at home and can't even cook properly. How much is a dog's food costing? You might as well eat dog food." He would repeat such cruel remarks. There was no intimate life anymore, so having children was out of the question. If even a single dog hair was found, he would yell, "Can't you even clean properly?" So I had to clean every corner of the house before he returned. Joe started working overtime more and coming home late at night. "Business at company isn't good," he said. But he often came home smelling of alcohol. I wanted to question if it was really work, but I kept quiet to avoid being yelled at. If I went to bed before him, he would wake me up saying, "Who goes to bed before their husband?" I had to wait for him to return and wake up before him in the morning, leading to constant sleep deprivation. The word divorce started floating in my mind. I felt bad for Abby, who had introduced us. That was the only thing keeping me from divorcing. Still undecided, I went for a walk with my dog with shaky steps. I carelessly crossed at a red light without noticing an oncoming car. My dog, noticing it first, stood in front of the car to protect me. When I came to, both the dog and I were thrown onto the road. I only fractured my leg, but the dog died. Thinking of my dog who protected me, I spent my days crying in the hospital bed. However, Joe, without any consideration for me, complained, "When are you going to be discharged? There's a pile of laundry." He even insensitively said, "Well, at least there's no dog hair on the clothes now." My fracture was a difficult one to heal, and the doctor said after surgery, "It's unlikely to heal completely. We'll do rehabilitation, but you might become disabled. When I returned to my room in shock, Joe, who had heard the conversation, yelled, "This is because you walked the dog. Marrying you was a mistake." Am I useless to him because I might become disabled? I was speechless from the shock. To think I would lose my beloved dog, possibly become disabled, and be verbally abused by my husband whom I had served for so long. Joe went home, and I spent a sleepless night. The rehabilitation was tougher than I imagined, but my heart was more wounded. After that incident, Joe neither visited me in the hospital nor contacted me. As I was deciding to divorce him, he suddenly appeared and said, "We're getting a divorce. I'll demand property division. This is all your fault." He wrote the divorce papers himself and handed them to me. I signed the divorce papers as he instructed. He seemed to have filed them immediately because he returned the same day and shouted, "I've filed for divorce. The property division is $50,000. You have your parents' inheritance, right?" I thought, if it meant cutting ties with them, it didn't matter anymore, and agreed. Fine. I even wondered if he had been after my parents' inheritance from the start. Joe seemed taken aback by my nonchalant attitude, but said only, "Well, the lawyer will come later. Make sure you have the money ready. I'll use it to move out of the house." And then he quickly left. Later, a lawyer came and hesitantly demanded the property division, but I paid it promptly. By then, I had a certain plan in mind. Soon after my discharge, I heard that Joe and Abby had remarried. Apparently, they used my property division to rent a new apartment and registered their marriage quickly. A friend who told me this was surprised I wasn't shocked and said, "Why aren't you surprised? She was your best friend. Isn't Abby terrible?" She was angry on my behalf. Why wasn't I surprised? Because I had known about it a little earlier. In fact, the truth was worse. I should probably say I felt more anger than sadness. In reality, Abby and Joe had been dating before I married him. I found out about this while I was hospitalized and mentioned thinking about divorce to a friend, who then told me. She happened to see them arguing in a store. It was before my marriage to Joe, and it seemed Abby was refusing his wish to marry. Since my partner was Joe, she was surprised but couldn't tell me and had kept silent. In other words, Abby introduced me to Joe because she was bothered by his desire to marry by 30. That's because she was supposed to be dating her elite boyfriend at the time. In short, Joe was always her second choice. I don't know if Abby and Joe were together while I was married to him, but given their lack of morals, they must have met occasionally. I somehow knew that Joe's frequent overtime was due to their relationship rekindling. Revenge on both of them became one of my goals. For my other goal, I continued to work hard on my rehabilitation. Then, a year later, after finishing work, I checked my private smartphone and saw 30 missed calls from Joe. Mandy thought, did he find out? Just as I was about to make arrangements, Joe called, and I accidentally answered. Without waiting for my reply, Joe started shouting, "You were on TV, right? What's this about owning a dog salon?" I sighed at his usual presumptuousness and said, "That's none of your business, is it?" Yes, it is. Where did you get the funds? It's only been a year since then. If you saved it during our marriage, it's joint property. That means property division. He sounded eager for money, pressuring me with his intense voice. The old me might have been intimidated, but now, as a small business owner, I had gained some confidence. You think you're getting money? Sorry, but no. Parents' inheritance doesn't become joint property. What? The inheritance was $50,000, right? You lied. Yes, I lied. So what? I thought someone might take it away. When I stood my ground, he was momentarily speechless. But not to be outdone, he said, "But even so, you couldn't have built that fancy salon with an attached dog run, right?" Yes, my salon was large, with a spacious dog run attached, unique enough to attract TV coverage. Thanks to that, the shop is thriving, fully booked for the next 6 months. But I did build it. After all, I made $400,000 a year. What? His dumbfounded voice was priceless. Just hearing it was refreshing. Wait, what is that? There's no way a high school grad like you could earn that much. Still harping on about the high school thing. What a petty man. But I did earn that much. It feels like something my dog in the afterlife blessed me with. Lies. $400,000? Impossible. Ah, right. That's not inheritance, so it's a matter of property division. I was ready with my response. Sorry, but nope. The money was earned from my parents' inheritance, and I'm a sole proprietor, so the income was part of my business funds. Yes, when my investments started doing well, I had registered myself as a sole proprietor for precaution, saving the profit as business capital. So it wasn't part of the marital property. To my exclamation, he seemed stunned and said despairingly, "How could this be?" Wondering why he was so troubled, he confessed, "Abby has been buying luxury brands without telling me, and now we're drowning in debt." Indeed, Abby always had a high regard for elite status and owned many branded items. That's unfortunate, especially since I'll be demanding compensation from both of you next week. The total is $110,000. Good luck. I laughed heartily. What? It took time to gather evidence. Also, I was busy setting up my own shop, but I'll make the claim formally. Look forward to it. Wait, what? $110,000? The compensation for infidelity is $30,000 each, right? That's $60,000 for both. And the property division I paid, I'll just have that back, so $50,000 plus makes $110,000. What infidelity? I didn't cheat. You did. Right from the start. I know you were with Abby even before you married her. When I firmly stated this, Joe let out a whimper like a frightened woman. And then, as soon as I had an accident, you filed for divorce and demanded the property division. The worst kind of man. I wish you had to pay more compensation. As I continued to shout angrily, he replied in a scared voice, "Wait, please. That was because Abby told me she was pregnant and I panicked, thinking I had to divorce." That pregnancy? You two don't have any children, right? Yeah, that's right. Right after we registered our marriage, she said it was a misunderstanding. But I couldn't back out then. It wasn't my fault. What a pathetic man. His words themselves prove his infidelity. I checked the recording light, confirming that I had caught him in his admission, and said, "Thank you. Now I have evidence." Realizing he had been trapped, Joe finally understood and cried out, "Wait, what I just said is a lie! A lie!" Ignoring his cries, I hung up the phone. Of course, I blocked his number and forwarded the conversation to my lawyer. As the testimony from my friend alone was weak evidence, I had been trying to gather proof of Joe and Abby's infidelity for a year, struggling to find any due to it being a past event. This opportunity was perfect for me, and I grinned. As promised, I claimed the full $110,000 in compensation. Apparently, Abby had misunderstood her own pregnancy and confessed to her late boyfriend, only to be dumped by him and run back to Joe. That boyfriend ended up marrying a company executive's daughter. Abby might have been the real second choice. 6 months later, while shopping in town, I happened to see Abby. Living a rough life, her once praised beauty was nowhere to be seen. Dressed up, but with messy hair and rough skin, she looked pitiable. Joe's tyrannical behavior at home might have affected her. Then she noticed me and approached aggressively. "You liar! You said Joe was a good husband. You were the one who said it." To be called a liar at this point, I was so stunned that I couldn't close my mouth. I always hated it. Top of the class, but you chose dogs over college? Working happily. While I'm exhausted at work, you should suffer. She began crying and shouting in the middle of the street, attracting a crowd. "So, this is what you get for what you've done." When I calmly said that, she turned bright red and ran away, never to be seen again. Later, Joe and Abby constantly fought and eventually divorced. While their relationship worked as lovers, marriage was different. Abby had to move back to the countryside with her parents to pay off her debts and the compensation, working in a factory. Joe, now the subject of office gossip for causing 2 divorces, voluntarily resigned and is scraping by through multiple part-time jobs. As for me, my dog grooming salon is more popular than ever, and we're discussing opening a second location. Ah, and about my leg. Thanks to rehabilitation, I can walk normally now. I'm excited to get a new dog and go for walks again. Surrounded by loving dogs and their owners, I'm living happily.